Thank you so much for your evidence this morning. Now, we've received submissions from BP, and they say that the current tax system is working as intended, but Australians are obviously seeing a record amount of exports, obviously, and still struggling to pay their power bills and juggling with cost of living crisis. So, in your opinion, who exactly is this, tax system really working for?
Well, we're not tax specialists, right? We may have opinions, but if you go back to first principles, then a sovereign needs to make sure that its citizens are getting a fair return for the use of non-renewable resources. Okay, gas is a good example. And the policy question for the Australian government is Australia getting a fair return for the development of its gas resources and export, or any other mineral, right? And I think the evidence that we see before us, based on a lot of quite reputable think tanks and economists, is the short answer is no, and clearly no. And I think it's also a task of government to separate out vested interest considerations, which will come up with the kind of arguments that you put forward, because they defend the present profitable regime against the larger public interest. Now, what the resource rental tax should be, or what the export tax should be, is an open question. There are different views we're aware of. You've heard them: 25% from some, 50% from others, and so on and so forth. So we're not buying into that one, but it's very clear, I think, from the academic literature that we are not getting a sufficient return from resources. Our point is that we need to look at that also in the context of the transformational costs for the country, and how this fits into that is very important. The transformation is not cost-free. It will require a lot of upfront investment. Okay, the benefits are great. Actually, return on investment for decarbonisation is high, not just in financial terms, but also for employment. We also do those kinds of analyses, and I think nearly everywhere we've done these assessments, with one or two exceptions, by sector, there is a substantial net increase in employment. In Australia, the work that we're looking at now for decarbonising would actually probably lead to significant regional employment opportunities as well, right? So, but that's consistent with so many global studies and international assessments. So I think these issues need to be balanced up by government. Government does have a responsibility, even going back to ancient Roman times, of holding resources in trust for the people, and the political system needs to basically operationalise that in a way that produces a fair return.
We've heard from Chevron in their submissions that if we increase taxes on gas exports, companies will take their money elsewhere, and that threat is quite, they spread the fear, as Mr. Hooley was mentioning earlier in your response to Senator Darmanin. Now, based on global transition away from fossil fuels you've outlined, how real is this threat? Or, are we as Australians just being scared, or is the government just being scared off into accepting a bad deal?
My personal view is the latter. I think that if you look at, companies everywhere, not just Australia, they often make threats like that. And whether it's in America for resource development projects, or here, or in Europe for investment in steel or whatever, you hear these arguments all the time. There have been lots of studies into this, and they don't really stack up in the end. There might be a risk that a company would not get its, projects over FID because of an increased taxation system. Would it matter for Australia? I don't think so. If you believe that we have an interest in meeting the Paris Agreement's goals, then in fact there shouldn't be any new gas resource development. We have enough to meet that, and so you would be looking at transforming that industry into something else. So that's the alternate perspective, that if the argument is about increasing investment to expand gas resources, that is completely the wrong direction. We will literally cook the planet if everyone does that, and there will be really dramatic damages to Australia, notably in our regions, but also for infrastructure in cities, and human life and health will suffer as well as our ecosystem. So the alternate case, which we contend is the correct one to look at, is the government needs to be looking at transitioning this industry out of fossil fuel exports into green alternatives.
Thank you, Mr Hare. Thank you.